tator-chan here. With recent news of the Collar Malice anime adaptation actually being a movie instead of a TV anime, my hopes for it have fallen significantly. Not that I was expecting much before, but a movie means the adaptation will be even more limited in providing a full and satisfying experience. This got me thinking, why do so many anime adaptations of Otome suck? Not all of them are bad, mind you. There are at least a few good ones, but based on some that I have seen, poor anime adaptations of Otome are lacking at best when compared to the source material. Some of them are hot garbage, which is at least entertaining enough to make fun of, but the worst adaptations are just plain boring. Aside from being an adaptation though, these anime are just not enjoyable, and a lot of that has to do with how the story and characters are adapted to screen. I chalk up the cause of these issues mostly to a lack of time and the inability to combine all routes into one consistent good story. Otome games can vary in length. For my own playthrough of different titles, it can take me anywhere between 20 to 50 plus hours to finish all routes, including bad and good endings. It really depends on how much content the game has, and a lot of anime adaptations tend to be one core, which is about 12 or 13 episodes, and on average 20 to 25 minutes in length, just barely scratching the surface of overall gameplay time. For some reason, the writers try really hard to fit a whole narrative in one season. It is possible for some stories to be told in a short time, but when it comes to Otome adaptations, it's very difficult when your main cast consists of 5 to 6 characters, and you don't have the time to explore each one thoroughly. My other point has to do with how it adapts the story and characters. In an Otome, you can have several stories in one game, so to speak. They may have a shared prologue between them, which is referred to as the common route, but it eventually branches off into different paths that focus on a specific love interest. In more story-driven Otome, different routes will provide different details in regards to the overarching story and answer ongoing questions. The love interest of that route could also be revealed to have a deeper connection to the story, which you didn't see before in other character routes. It isn't until after the final route, which is sometimes defined as the true route, that nearly all questions have been answered and the player knows what the whole story is about. Otome games are the epitome of the saying, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. In other words, once you have played every part of the story in an Otome, you have a greater understanding of what it's trying to say by the end. If you were to play only one route, for instance, the deeper themes are more likely to fly over your head, and you'd have a more shallow understanding of the entire game. Anime doesn't exactly work like in Otome though. Stories tend to be told in a linear manner. Once you've watched the anime that is the greater whole, there is no choosing certain paths to change the ending, and you don't decide who the main love interest is, and apparently neither does the anime in most cases. The fun of Otome games, in my opinion, are the paths players can go down through the choices they select. Once the experience switches mediums and becomes visual based, you're just going to have to sit there and watch. Not just that, but again, you're going to see a butchered attempt because the story is condensed to 12 or 13 episodes. It's not like an anime adaptation has to stick entirely to the game because we've already established it's difficult or downright impossible to do, but it just really feels like a lot of the time the anime adaptations are low effort for some reason. I'm totally on board with an anime taking what it's given and making an original story that incorporates the most important elements of the source material, while also maintaining the spirit and essence of the work, but that requires time and effort, something that anime studios tend to neglect with adaptations of Otome. To help better highlight the issues with anime adaptations of Otome, I'll be talking about several titles, which are arguably the most notorious of the adaptations. To help me out, I watched the first episodes of these anime and played a bit of the game for comparison's sake. Fair warning, these episodes' qualities vary on a scale of not very good to crap. No major spoilers either for both sources beyond a basic summary of the premise and what occurs in the game's prologue and the anime's first episode. All anime titles are timestamped in the video. Also, a heads up, even though I consider myself a big Otome fan, heck, I've been collecting the limited editions of every new release for the Switch so far, I haven't played through every Otome out there. I base my opinions on the anime itself, as well as my understanding of the games. Plus, a lot of the Otome games that have anime adaptations haven't even been brought over from Japan, so even if I wanted to play it, I couldn't unless I did it through alternative means. Still, no one has to play any of the source material to know if the anime is good or not. Now let's kick things off with an old favorite that's recently been ported to the Switch. Amnesia was originally released in 2011 for PlayStation Portable, which was ported to several systems by late 2013. During that time, an anime adaptation was made by Brainsbase, a perfectly fine but not very memorable anime studio in my opinion. They've done quite a few anime adaptations of Otome, some good and some not so good. Amnesia is a game I have played through and finished. What's appealing about it is that it's rooted in a mystery. The heroine has amnesia, and in each route, which takes place in alternate universes simply put, the respective love interests seem to know her. But since she can't remember them, generally the story is about her getting to know them and eventually falling in love. Some points the story can get dark, and it has an atmosphere of suspense that hinges on the heroine's memory loss. That's why it was always interesting to start a new route and see what the heroine's situation is this time. For example, at the start of Shin's route, his behavior and treatment toward her is much like a boyfriend's, you know, if he was a tsundere. Of course, since she doesn't remember him, there's this lingering question about whether Shin is someone she can trust or if he's taking advantage of her. The heroine's spirit companion, Orion, even warns about this being one of the countless problems she could encounter as an amnesiac. The swirling doubts of the other characters, and even of the heroine herself, keeps players on their toes as they try to piece together the overarching mystery. The anime is... Episode 1 is a pretty darn boring way to kick off this story. There's absolutely zero of that suspense I just mentioned. It's actually depicted in the driest, slowest manner you could go with. This is absolutely attributed to the heroine herself. My girl does not have any emotion, I swear. She reacts to things that happen, but she doesn't seem to feel or have any thoughts on it, if that makes sense. I mean, just because you get amnesia doesn't mean your personality disappears alongside your memories. Right? Well, it had been a few years since I played the game, so I went back just to check if the heroine's flat personality was an anime-only problem, or if the game also had this issue. And to my surprise, it did. Our boy Orion even notes in the prologue that she doesn't seem to have a personality, but somehow this doesn't feel as problematic in the Otome as it does in the anime. I had to think about why this was the case for a moment, but then I realized this is an inherent result of changing from an interactive medium to a visual medium. What I mean by that is, in the game, you, the player, are literally put into the heroine's shoes. You don't see her sprite on the side of the dialogue box like you may in other Otome. The only time you'd see her at all are in the CGs throughout the game. You know as much about the situation as she does, which is nothing at all. The heroine never has any dialogue that's written in the script, not spoken nor thought of. The player chooses a response for her to say, but it's never put in writing outside of the choice menu. This is something that makes sense in the game, but it's not something you can adapt into an anime. In the anime, you're no longer literally looking through the heroine's eyes, you're now a fly on the wall, watching her play through the story herself. This plus the lack of a distinct personality makes the anime incredibly dull. Even if it went against a purposeful mechanic in the game, giving the protagonist some sort of personality in the adaptation would have helped make it at least somewhat more entertaining. Also, as I said before, one thing anime adaptations tend to do with Otome games is combine the stories of all routes. It's made apparent right away in just the first episode alone, which flip-flops between several of the boys, making it so I'm attached to none of them. The game benefits from giving you plenty of one-on-one time with your selected love interest at the beginning before tossing you in with the rest of the cast. Of course, the anime adaptation isn't going to choose a love interest to focus on. It's much safer to have all of them in here to appease all fans, and with 12 episodes to work with, there isn't much time to thoroughly go through all the boys' arcs, nor really look at the mystery through different angles. Unfortunately, Amnesia's anime is a pass. It's best to stick with the game. Originally a 2010 novel series, with its game adaptation released as two versions a la Pokemon, Brothers Conflict, or BroCon for short, is about exactly what you think it is. A 17-year-old high school girl becomes the stepsister to 13 brothers who vary in age and occupation. The lucky heroine has plenty of options here, from the eldest 31-year-old moe doctor to the youngest 10-year-old, an actual, literal child.
FBI, open up!
Ugh, this is so bad. So yeah, choose your criminal sentence carefully here, folks. Half of the candidate pool is practically illegal, or at least immoral. But I digress. This is an Otome, a fictional story, so I'll overlook this point for now. BroCon is one of those Otome that hasn't been officially brought over to the West, and since the Japanese releases were in 2012 and 2013, at this point I don't think it ever will be. Otherwise, if you really want to play it, there are some English fan translation patches out there. I don't know if it's because of the suggestive incest content or another issue, but this is something you can only experience the anime for legally. And the anime is, yeah, it's not very good, and Brain's Base is back yet again, which we know has a fantastic reputation thus far with Otome adaptations. You're already pushing your luck when there's 13 brothers to get through and only 12 episodes of the anime, plus a special, so you already know you're not going to get through all of them. But worst of all, some of the brothers are going to be pushed to the background and straight up neglected altogether. Yeah, I don't really remember the lawyer brother, like, at all, and there's also this Kuroko's basketball reject, but he was kind of a loser anyway, so no loss there. And while watching the episode, this brother just popped out of nowhere, and I was like, oh my god, I literally don't remember you. Y'all, if you ever hear someone call the heroine of an Otome a doormat, I think they're talking about this girl. Man, she has zero personality. Like the Amnesia anime, this protagonist is literally a stand-in for the viewer. I can't really tell you why any of the brothers are interested in her. I mean, her freaking pet squirrel has more personality in life than she does. I get if she's supposed to be this shy, quiet girl who's uncomfortable with her new environment, but I can't really say I'm interested in her relationship with her stepbrothers. Literally, in just the first episode alone, some of the guys are already kissing her and invading her personal space. Like, bro, you barely know her. The only thing you know about her is that she's your new sister. In fact, the brothers have more chemistry between themselves than with her. A terrific example would be the fake-out confession between the twins, which had more tension than anything else in the anime. I will point out there's a difference with how the heroine is presented in the game versus in the anime. In the BroCon game, the heroine has more inner thoughts, and she comes across as more open about her emotions. I don't personally think she's any more fun than her show counterpart, but at least you get to see a bit more under the surface instead of a blank stare or a blushing ooh-woo face. There is certainly a lot lost between the game and the adaptation, the main thing being that the Otome is not just choice-based, but also about stat raising. This kind of feature makes things a little more complex, but also a bit more personalized for the player. In this type of Otome, the player shapes the heroine's agenda for the day or the week, which will influence skill sets and or interactions with the love interest. This is applicable to BroCon, as the player chooses who the heroine does an activity with for the day, and there are special events that occur throughout the week as an in-game year goes by. And this ties into another big loss in the adaptation, which is how well we actually get to know the brothers. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the fact that there are 2 games to cover all 13 love interests and there are only 12 episodes of the anime tells you everything. Even in the prologue of the game, you have way more time to meet each brother one by one. You get to read about the heroine's impression of each one, and her squirrel is also way less aggravating than his anime counterpart. He's more just commentating on everything. In contrast to the game, the anime speeds through moments with the brothers, giving us not enough time to really process the interactions. I understand we have less than 25 minutes in the episode, which isn't the most time to get to know everyone, but the game handles it so much better, and you get a much deeper impression of each individual brother. Would having more episodes and more time fix the issues? In regards to getting to know more of the brothers, their relationships with each other, and with the heroine, sure. The heroine herself would still be rather mind-numbing to watch, but I guess I'd stay for the boys if anything. The subject matter is still uncomfortable and problematic for me personally, but I do understand this is a very specific niche for some. My recommendation, please don't watch this anime. You get as much out of it as you would banging your head on the wall. A headache. You would probably get a fuller experience from the game, though it unfortunately hasn't been officially released here. It's been good, BroCon, but it's time for us to say sayonara to incest and move on to better things. Speaking of better things in the most sarcastic sense, Ah, Diabolik Lovers. Even anime fans who don't play Otome games have probably heard about it. It has a reputation that precedes it, let's say. Published in 2012 by Otome for the PlayStation Portable, Diabolik Lovers now has 7 games, and none of them have been released internationally still. It must be pretty successful in Japan, so that makes me wonder why it hasn't been licensed anywhere else. I hadn't played the game, though like BroCon, there is an unofficial English patch out there. I watched a bit of the playthrough for it to get a sense of things. Even though the anime has a rather negative reputation, I just wanted to believe it didn't adapt the game well. The story is about a human girl who is sent by her father to a mansion that is occupied by vampire boys. Basically, she has been thrown to the wolves by her dad because these vampires take a great interest in her and call her their sacrificial bride, who they like to lightly torture and abuse. So I suppose I should have a warning here. If you're sensitive to topics of sadism and abuse, please skip ahead to this time for the next section of the video. Now, the anime is something I already had an opinion on. Airing in 2013 and produced by Zexus, my first watch of the anime happened in 2015. I have strong memories of the experience specifically, but I don't really remember anything that happened in the show. My friend and I, aware of the anime and its reputation, thought, what the heck, maybe it's so bad it's good. Started it up and watched 4 episodes. Needless to say, we fell asleep along the way because it's not even so bad it's good material, it's just bad. Worse than bad, it's terribly boring. As it's been a few years since I first tried watching it, I was curious how my experience would go this time. For funsies, I decided to invite my boyfriend, fellow YouTuber Ninja Mushi, to suffer with me on this one.
Whoa, where the f*** are we already going?
Needless to say, the anime is still as bad as I remember, and I think it left a great first impression on my boyfriend, who has never watched an Otome anime before.
Okay, can we not? Like, dude, please. Okay!
Oh
what kind of anime do you have me watching?
Surprise, surprise, but the game has something called build up before the heroine even takes a step into the mansion. You get to see the relationship between the heroine and her father, which seems to be quite important to the overall story. While in the anime there are a couple mentions to the father, the relationship between him and the heroine is not made clear, and the reveal of a mysterious photograph at the end of the episode does not have the shocking effect it probably should have. Another issue is the heroine herself. At this point, you might notice this is a pattern with Otome anime. Look, I'm not going to pretend every Otome has the most interesting, complex, badass leads, though there are a growing number of examples. For the 3 Otome I have brought up in particular, the heroines are more on the demure side, more reactive to events than proactive for the most part. There isn't anything wrong with a character that doesn't take charge and instead shows a more gentle, shy personality, but we're back in this pitfall with anime adaptations, which is why don't the protagonists ever have inner thoughts? With the exception of Amnesia, as we discussed, both the games of Brothers Conflict and Diabolik Lovers feature a protagonist with dialogue. I think this is even more important to show in Diabolik Lovers, as the heroine is in a f***ed up situation, and it'd be nice to get more of her thoughts besides just constantly running away and getting her blood sucked. In the game, she has a bit more initiative, especially with some of the spicier content. And let's make this point clear now. The terrible, abusive situation of the heroine is not so much different from the game's story. Arguably, for Diabolik Lovers, the messed up characters are pretty accurate to what they are in the game, although I'd say they are a little less intense and violent in some ways. You don't have to read too far into the game's story to get into the absolutely traumatizing content. The game has themes of violence, death, incest, and anything along those lines. It's definitely not a game for everyone, but it's important to understand that this is a story about traumatized characters hurting others, and a heroine that just sorta gives into Stockholm Syndrome. But the anime really doesn't dare cross the line, as it prefers to dip its toes in light BDSM and abuse. This is probably the biggest issue of the adaptation. It lacks the courage to really deep dive into trauma and show off every f***ed up part of the source material. Its biggest fault is failing to capture capture the spirit of the original. Despite my or others' reservations about the terrible characters and the uncomfortable storyline, the anime of Diabolik Lovers would probably got more respect if it had the balls to adapt the most grotesque and disturbing content of the source material. The anime gives you a half-baked, boring version of the fun you may have with the game. If you can stomach it, the game offers more in the ways of themes and characterization than the anime. It gets into dark, disturbing places, but at least it has a purpose to what it's saying, which is not something I can attribute to the anime adaptation.
So what did you think?
It's not great.
Is this like your first Otome anime?
I think so, yeah.
Awesome! Welcome to the world of Otome anime.
With all this being said, you can probably understand why the anime adaptation of Color Malice makes me nervous. I'm a big fan of the game because of its super engaging mystery and lovable cast of characters, from the tsundere sweetheart Sasazuka to the mysterious but endearing Shiraishi, my best boy by the way. Each route uncovers different aspects of a threatening organization. Once you've played through all routes, you have all the answers to every part of the mystery, and the mystery is deeper than you may think, as there are a lot of surprises in store between the villainous plot and the array of characters. This is why the anime adaptation worries me. Sure, you could probably cover the base mystery in the span of a movie, but there are so many parts to each route that need the full 40-something hours I put into the game, and you only get to really understand all the love interests when you uncover each individual mystery with them. It's inevitable that something is going to have to be sacrificed for the anime adaptation, especially with the time limit of what I assume will be 2 hours or less. Ideally, it would be more than one movie, although at that point I'd rather they just do a TV anime series instead. It's honestly a real bummer to me, but I should withdraw my judgment until I actually see the film. At the very least, I'll always have the game. And that's how I see all of these anime adaptations really. Even if the anime may be a weaker representation of the source material, the games will still be there for our enjoyment. It is interesting to me to see how an anime tries to adapt lengthy stories, whether it's a manga or a video game, with limitations like time and budget, even if the end result is not always successful. But what do you all think? Is there an anime adaptation I did talk about or I didn't mention that you enjoyed? Are there any Otome games out there you would think would work best for an anime adaptation? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Tator-chan here. Thanks for watching my second video. I uploaded my first video a month or so ago, and I'm really pleasantly surprised to see the positive reception. Thank you so much for well over 170 subscribers and 6,500 views. Hello, editor Tator-chan here. So you can tell how long it's been since I recorded my script originally, because the numbers on my first video have climbed so much since then. I've been very lazy about editing this second video. You guys are rock stars. Thank you so much. I hope to continue uploading a video every month or two with a time limit of 20 minutes or more to make up for the wait. I want to continue talking about Otome games and anime, but also my other interests like manga and BL. If there's any topic you're interested in me talking about, leave a comment down below. I also have a Twitter at tator_chan where you can interact with me a bit more, and I occasionally tweet updates. Thank you all for tuning in.